The New York Giants have been in search for a starting tight end that can not only be able to block off the line of scrimmage at a high rate, but can also be able to provide that security blanket for quarterback Daniel Jones for the past 3 years. And right now, the search is still on. But this year, there's a decent amount of young tight ends that are looking to carve out a very good role in this offense and potentially maybe be Daniel Jones's future tight end, or even for the next quarterback's tight end going into the future. What's going on, everybody? This is MYG Jeffy T3285, and today, for part 4 of the New York Giants Roundabout, we're going to be talking about the tight end position, which could arguably be the most competitive, the most intense, and easily the most fun position to watch to see what players are going to emerge and what players are not only going to make the roster but can also be in there for significant snaps. Now, it's a very, very wide open field here, as you have a couple of veterans that were brought in through free agency, as well as a player in the 4th round that was picked out of this past draft, a couple of undrafted free agents, and one guy that's returning from the roster last year. So it's a six-man competition right now, and we're going to start off the top with the 4th round pick out of San Diego State, and that's Daniel Bellinger. Now, Bellinger, he's a guy that hasn't really had a ton of opportunities when he was playing at San Diego State, but he was always known for a guy that can be able to block at a pretty high rate, and he's even shown the ability to be able to make the tough catches over the middle and even be able to take it to the distance when he has the opportunities given to him. And so far at OTAs and at minicamp, Daniel Bellinger has been one of the standouts for the New York Football Giants going forward. So it's easily to see that him and Daniel Jones have been able to develop some type of chemistry at the beginning of OTAs and minicamp, and maybe that can continue throughout training camp, and Daniel Bellinger could come into the season and he'll be able to snatch up the starting tight end role without any issues or anything, because this guy has the ability, he has quickness off the line, he's a very strong blocker, and he can be able to become that New York Giants tight end that we have been looking for such a long time for this team, because we've had to deal with the likes of Will Tye, Larry Donnell, Evan Ingram, Rhett Ellison, and also Kyle Rudolph and these types of guys. We haven't really had a stable tight end that can go out there and just bring us the combination of catching the ball, being a security blanket, being a good receiving option, as well as being a standout blocking tight end. And Daniel Bellinger might be that guy. So I don't want to put a lot of too much pressure on the kid, but he could be that guy that can be that standout tight end that we've been looking for. Now, in terms of some of the other guys on the roster, another guy that was brought in, Ricky Seals-Jones, who was playing with the Washington Commanders last year. He's basically been a veteran tight end for most of his career, not the strongest of blockers. He's a decent receiving option, mainly known as a backup tight end when he's brought in. He was signed to a minimum 1-year deal, and he was projected to be the starting tight end coming into training camp, but he's also been struggling to crack the first team and even second team snaps for the New York Giants in minicamp and also in OTA. So this is a guy that needs to have a strong training camp and needs to be able to become a better blocker overall. And he is a veteran, so the Giants might be leaning on him a little bit more because they might be wanting to lean on some of the veterans coming into camp. So he has to come and have a very strong preseason as well, show the coaching staff that he belongs, and maybe he can not only carve out a role on this roster, but he can be a guy that can be able to maybe take that starting job that's available right now. But right now, Ricky Seals-Jones is a little bit of an uphill battle to climb because there's a lot of good young tight ends on this roster. Another guy is Jordan Akins coming over from the Texans. He's also another guy, probably more upside in terms of a receiving option. He's more of a straight inline tight end that can make you those tough catches over the middle, take it deep if he has to, but he's not a very strong blocker at all. And he's not even that wonderful when it comes to the short passing game. He's mostly known for the deep inline passing game where he's going to be able to get you some of those chunk plays. But it's been happening so sporadically because the Houston Texans didn't really use the tight end in their offense as much as they used to in the past. So Jordan Akins has always been a guy that's been sort of on the fence. You don't really know what this guy can completely bring, but maybe in this Brian Daboll type of offense, if Akins can crack the roster, he can be a guy that can, maybe show this team something going into training camp and preseason, and maybe it can be that, inline deep threat type tight end that could use in the offense. Another guy that's been getting a lot of praise and even got some first team snaps has been Austin Allen, the tight end out of Wisconsin. He's got the biggest frame on this team. He's 6'8", 6'9", big body tight end. He's a big, perfect guy that you can put into the red zone. Undrafted, I guess, because they were questioning about, his age as well as, is his skill set can be able to transition to the next level? Is he a adequate enough blocker? I think he's got the ability to be a good blocking tight end. He's a perfect red zone target. He's even shown the ability to make some plays in terms of the short intermediate game. He's a perfect security blanket, and he can make some good catches over the middle. So I think Austin Allen has a very strong chance to make this roster. In fact, I'm actually thinking that he could end up being the second or third tight end behind Daniel Bellinger, because I think Daniel Bellinger will ultimately, in the end, be able to be that tight end one when the season begins. Couple of the other guys that are there, you have Chris Myrick, that's returning to the New York Giants, going in his second season out of Temple, 6'5" tight end. He's mostly known as a guy that you could plug in there for a couple of plays a game. He's going to maybe make you a catch or two during the game. He had a touchdown last year. He's an adequate blocking tight end, not great. He's basically a back of the a roster tight end, maybe a guy you could stash on the practice squad going forward. I don't really expect him to probably make the roster, especially since the New York Giants have strengthened the tight end position going into this past offseason in terms of the draft and free agency. So I don't really expect Chris Myrick to make this roster going forward. And the other guy that's made here is Andre Miller. And he's just pretty much a prospect right now that you're just going to see what this guy, if he's going to maybe show you anything in camp right now. 6'3". He was a wide receiver coming into the NFL. He's now been transitioned over to tight end. He's bulked up a little bit. He has some abilities to maybe be a decent player, but I think if anything, this guy is a perfect stash on the practice squad guy. If the New York Giants believe in his skill set, that if they were able to develop him a little bit more, you could throw him on the practice squad for a little bit of time and, see what this guy can bring you. And then, I don't expect Andre Miller, even if he's on the practice squad, to really do anything with the New York Giants going forward. So, out of all in terms of the percentages of what I think these guys are going to make the roster, I'd probably say Daniel Bellinger is the only guy that's a sure 100% to make this roster because he's a fourth-round pick. The New York Giants really believe in his skill sets. He's shown good soft hands. He's been able to make some big plays in OTAs and minicamp. Yeah, I know OTAs and minicamp are nothing really to write home about, but this guy's developed some chemistry quickly with Daniel Jones, and I think he's going to ultimately he's obviously going to make the roster, and I think he'd even be in line to be the starting tight end, so I give him 100%. Austin Allen, the undrafted, I think Austin Allen has probably say a 65 to 70% chance to make the roster, because I think the Giants are just going to want to see what this guy can bring in terms of the red zone efficiency, blocking and everything. And I think the Giants are going to want to roll with some of these younger players and try to develop them during the season. In terms of Ricky Seals-Jones, I think his percentage is a little bit lower. I'd probably say 45 to 50% he's going to make the roster, because he's signed to such a minimum deal. I don't expect him to automatically make the roster because he was signed as a free agent. He was projected to be the starter. I think he's got a little bit of an uphill battle to climb, the fact he was working with the third team going forward in OTAs and minicamp. So I think he's got a little bit of a struggle going forward. So I think he's going to be a 45 to 50% chance. In terms of Jordan Akins, I'd probably say about 55% chance to make it. He's got a nice little battle to go on with him too, but I think because of his ability to stretch the field, he's a little bit more athletic and more of a fit with this Brian Dable and Mike Kafka offense than Ricky Seals-Jones is, so I think he's given him a better upper chance to make the roster in terms of being that inline tight end. Chris Myrick, like I said, I'd probably say about a 25-30% chance to make the roster, because I just think the tight end position was upgraded this past offseason, and I think Myrick is a perfect guy you could just stash on the practice squad. And Andre Miller, unless he really shows out in training camp and preseason, I think he's got the least amount of chance to make this roster, because I think the odds are just a little bit higher. I think they're a little bit more difficult for him to make it, so I put him in the 10 to 15% chance, maybe even lower than that. Now, one guy that I did not include on this list is the tight end / fullback, Jeremiah Hall, which a lot of New York Giants fans and beat writers have been really hyping up a lot. The tight end out of, I believe, Texas A&M. New York Giants fans have been hyping this guy up, thinking that he could be that guy that can also make a difference going into the season. He's got a lot of good physical traits that can be a guy that can make the back end of this roster. But the reason why I didn't include him in the tight end group, because I think ultimately he's going to end up being that fullback. I think he'd end up becoming the Giants' full-time fullback, and if that's how he's going to make the roster, because there's a lot of good competition right now there in the tight end position, I think they're going to try to look at Jeremiah Hall more as a fullback instead of a tight end, and I think that's where he's going to have his best shot to crack this roster. But that's just my little overview of the tight end position going into the 2022 training camp and preseason for the New York Giants. If you liked the video, please hit the like button below. Subscribe if you haven't already to NYG Jeffy T 3285 for more breaking news, updates, and chatter surrounding the New York Giants. Turn on the bell for notifications for the next short or video that come out for the New York Giants, Brooklyn Nets, New York Mets, and WWE Wrestling. And leave a comment below on who you think is going to emerge out of this tight end group, which is probably the most ultra-competitive group to see who's going to be the number one tight end. What guy or guys do you think are going to ultimately emerge out of this tight end group and snatch that number one, number two, and possibly number three tight end positions for the New York Giants? Because I think ultimately they're going to carry 3 tight ends going into this season. I hope everybody enjoys their Monday. I hope their Tuesday. I hope everybody had a great 4th of July. Enjoy the rest of your week. Take it easy, and remember, let's go New York Football Giants.